First of all, thanks for inviting me to this talk. I hope, you know, the slides I shared today are of use to some of you. And I think I'll just start with my presentation. So that's the title in a big font called Capturing the Magic of Automotive Viz in Unreal Engine / world building for Lotus cars. I should have started my name. So my name's J.H. Patel. But yeah, move on to the next slide. A bit, some background info on myself. So I'm a CG generalist and director from Nairobi, Kenya, born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya. And I'm self-taught with, I'd say 14 plus years. It's almost 15 now. And I've worked across different industries: advertising, design, automotive, architecture, and architectural visualization and virtual reality. I started learning CG back in 2010, and so this came from an interest in film and gaming, mainly, all those games we used to play in CryEngine, Crisis, and other titles. So I started learning CryEngine around 2012 before eventually switching to Unreal in a few years after, maybe 2015. After that, I've been lucky enough to work with, both local and global brands across all different industries. I've been with the Lotus design team at Lotus Tech Creative Center since 2021 as I'd say Unreal Engine artist, but more of a CG generalist. And in 2023, I was part of the Unreal Engine World Building Fellowship by Epic, and yeah, got me this nice badge down there. And I learned a lot, by just being part of the fellowship and seeing all the amazing projects the other people were doing. So before we move on to the next slide, which is my show reel, I describe my work as a mix of technical and creative direction. So it's a wide range of skills, from design, world building, modeling, virtual cinematography, lighting, and more technical things like specifically to Unreal, PCG blueprints, and more. So at the end, we saw a number of different DCCs. So apart from Unreal Engine, I use Houdini, Max, Blender, Substance Painter, Resolve, and other softwares. So Unreal Engine, I'd say, is more of a final assembly software where you set up all your shaders and lighting, visualization, and get the final output from Unreal. Moving on to the next slide is now the main topic of our talk, which is automotive visualization for Lotus. I have two projects to share, which is the theory one and a film we did for the theory one and the Lotus Emira. I'll start with theory one. And so this film, I mean, the entire project was produced entirely in-house by the Lotus design team, LTCC, Lotus Tech Creative Center, using Unreal Engine as a main software in terms of workflow for the film. After this, we'll play the cinematic. Sorry, after this slide, we'll have the cinematic, so we understand what's going on. And yeah, so the theory one is a concept car built by Lotus. It's basically the future of intelligent performance. And this was a production by the Lotus design team across different departments. That's strategy, design, visualization, all departments. And Unreal Engine was basically the full pipeline, from previs to final output. There are other softwares used for things like simulations and procedural generations. I'll cover that in the slides after this. Here's a list of everyone who worked on the project. So you see it's a big team. The Unreal team consists of, for this project, was myself, Josh, Philip, and Gurdeep. And I was assigned the desert driving sequences, which we'll see in the cinematic after this.
Since the dawn of our history, we've dreamt of what it means to drive. We create cars you wear, shaped around you. They are extensions of yourself. Drivers of automobiles, drivers of tomorrow. This is Lotus Theory 1.
Thank you again. And yeah, you can see this was, done across different departments. And the soundtrack, voiceover, everything was done in-house. Again, there's the entire list of credits over here. You can follow, I think everyone's on social media, and yeah, really, really talented team. Here I have, maybe I can just play this on my side because it's a a viewport recording. So I'm just cycling through different view modes in Unreal, covering the shot setup in sequencer for one of the spoiler shots. So that's all done in sequencer, and we switch between deferred rendering and I mean path tracing, because that's what we normally use for the final renders. And yeah, we can make changes, all in editor. We try and keep post-production to minimum, because I'd say 99% of what you see in the final render is from Unreal, minus some color correction in post, color grading, not color correction. And a few more breakdown shots over here. So that's the final render from one of the frames from the final film, and a world normal pass in Unreal. And you can see we have VDBs, and VDBs are basically there's effects from Ambergen that are being spawned in real time in Unreal as per the shots required. And you can see it's a subtle dust layering over here. It's not meant to overpower the shot, but mainly, something you'd see passing through a desert, something just subtle that interacts with the car collisions. And the background is all PCG foliage scattered as needed per the shot. Then again, this is all in engine, and then color grading in post. We render EXRs, 32-bit EXR, so that gives us control in post when it comes to grading. This is the second one of the other shots from the film, and this was, I basically cranked up the motion blur in sequencer. I think the default value in Unreal is 0.5, but for this I I changed it to 0.9 just to give me this sense of speed when the car's moving. Another thing I did was I rendered this as an undercrank shot, which means my sequencer is in either 30 or 60 FPS, but then my render is in 12 or 15 frames per second. So when you import the frames in edit, you get this undercrank effect, like how you'd do in using a real camera. So another shot from the film, and we're looking at a meta-human driver inside the car, which is linked to the interior, which basically ensures wherever the car's moving in any direction, we have the meta-human linked. And again, in the background, you see the foliage scattering, which is all done using PCG. I have a bonus section on this towards the end on how I usually set it up. And the landscape was done in Gaia, which I set it up in Gaia and then imported as a height map in Unreal. Then, since it's a desert, I think I use maybe 3 landscape layers. So there's more of the darker sand towards the road edges, where we see, for example, over here, that it gets gradually, the gradient gets lighter as we move to the distance before we see the hills over here. And the height map was from Gaia. Then I used landscape patches in Unreal to kind of raise the dunes wherever I felt maybe I see too much of the backdrop. I just go into my shot and use I think it's called landscape stamps in Unreal. Yeah, so I can just raise or lower the terrain as needed. Again, working in Unreal, even though our final films are rendered in path tracing, we are able to make changes on the fly. Unlike, in the past, I've worked with 3ds Max and V-Ray for many years. It's obviously it's an amazing tool, but iterations would always mean you'd spend extra time uh, rendering out stills, making a few tests, and just seeing the results later on after you've done the test renders. Whereas this is all in real time. So even if you're doing pre-visualization, you can just render in Lumen and create a play blast in Resolve. Just gives you enough an understanding of what you need to change in your frame. In terms of more technical info for the framing, it's most of the shots I set up like the close-up shots where we see the spoiler. My preference most of the times is anything above 70 mil for the detail shots. This is on a 16:9 DSLR film back setting, and it just gives you this nice bokeh. If I move back to the main image, we see this really nice, almost milky, soft depth of field in the background. And for wider shots, I don't go. Again, this depends on the shot, but I don't usually go wider than 40 mil for the hero shots. Again, this just depends on the kind of shots you're going for, but yeah, that's how I usually set things up. Next is this is a basic screenshot of my PCG setup. PCG again is procedural content generation in Unreal. For this project, it's mainly used as a scattering tool for foliage. I had, I think, 3 variations of PCGs. So in the distance where we see it starts blending into the horizon, I have more dense PCGs over here, and then towards the blend where we have the road and the sand, we have a less dense version of the PCG. And this was done using, I think, when PCG was just introduced in after the Electric Dreams demo by Epic. Again, yeah, this is a simple example of PCGs, but I prefer using this because it's more of a rule-based scattering. I can easily tweak any values I need in the settings rather than painting it using the foliage painter tools. I can just again spawn this even based on the sequence, on the shot that we need. So this covers the first project, which is the theory one. You can find more info on the actual car on the team's Behance page, which again I have the links on the last slide. The next project is a more recent one, I think 3 months, maybe 2 months ago. It's called the Lotus Emira for drivers. This was again a campaign, an in-house film to promote the Lotus Emira with updated performance and design elements, new color, personalization options, and so on. The goal for this was to create a product accurate and photorealistic film, which again we used Unreal Engine for all the exterior shots, and then we used the interior elements were all live action, shot by Calvin. Again, his full name's in the list of credits. You can check out more of his work. So in terms of the shot creation, we didn't have much time for this film. I think maybe a week and a half for the entire thing. So this meant we'd basically be reusing our own assets, environments we've built for other projects. And the beauty of doing this in CG is we can use the same environment on another film, change the lighting, change the setting, and it looks, I wouldn't say looks brand new, but it just adds a new mood to the film. And this was split. The project was split between two artists, myself and Philip. Philip was tasked with creating the city shots, and I was tasked with the driving shots. Again, the live action elements were shot by Calvin, who was also the director and editor for this project. And again, I'm just saying that everything you see in this film is done in-house. So it's just a testament to how talented the entire team is. So the next slide will be the actual film, after which I'll go into more technical details on the actual project.
The new Lotus Emira, British, mid-engine, track-tuned. It's civilized, but under that sleek body, visceral, analog. This is what happens when a supercar gets its act together. But hold on, it won't be Lotus if we stop there. It's got space for two, a trunk for gym bags, and a glove box full of your excuses. And it doesn't scream at you, unless you ask it to. It's the perfect daily for drivers. So, are you a driver or what?
I'll go back to the previous slide, and yeah, so this is, again, everything's done in-house across different departments, and we feedback process and everything's really it's usually very streamlined in terms of what needs to be done. So we normally don't have any last minute surprises, since it's all handled by our team. So this is just an Unreal Engine breakdown in terms of what the data usually looks like, which is prepped by a data prep team. And you can see all the shots we try and get as much as possible in engine. Okay, I'll just pause on specific sections. So this is all this the data we work with. Usually it's all CAD data. You can see how dense the geometry is. This is all prepped by the data prep team. And I'm just slowly going over the actual geo. You can see how detailed everything is. Then switching to path tracing mode, just to kind of show our shader library. So this again is built by the team using Substrate. So we don't use the legacy shader system anymore. We switched to Substrates a few I think years or maybe months ago, and it does add to realism, you can say, in terms of how good everything looks. And look dev is another thing that's usually project specific. So depending on the brief, we usually do look dev based on that. And this is me just setting the shot up in sequence, so you can see the lens flare, lens imperfections, and everything's done in engine. And for this film, we wanted to try a few different things, like getting these mounted shots. So you're basically mounting a camera to the car and get this really cool, it's a POV, almost POV shots. since it's path tracing, you can't really see it clearly because it's denoising in real time. But yeah, that's the environment set up in UE. I've used this on, I think, 3 different projects, Lotus projects, and again we have control over the lighting setup and other things. So it usually ends up looking different for all the other projects. But you can understand, when a brief is, I mean, when the project is needed in a week or 2 weeks time, you don't really have the time to set everything up from scratch. And I'll just switch to my other slide. And yeah, sorry, I was looking for the other slide. And yeah, I mean, I know there are questions usually with automotive in Unreal that why would you use path tracing in Unreal when you can, just render it in Lumen? So one of the biggest issues I've had with Lumen, even though it does look amazing, is things like the glass shaders. I feel it still needs some time to make glass look as good as you'd get in path tracing, because it's a path tracing is an offline render, just like Corona, V-Ray, I think Redshift, and you can see if we're doing a product accurate film, everything needs to be correct. So if the index of refraction on the glass is off, then it doesn't look right. And although I have done tests with Lumen in UE 5.6, and I'd say it's catching up really fast. In terms of the main topic, that's so I just close off the main section for automotive. We have the 2 projects from Lotus, but I do have a bonus section on PCG, which I've been using extensively on all projects, whether it's automotive or any other kind of project. PCG is basically a system within Unreal. I'm trying to explain this as easy as possible. So it's a procedural system in Unreal, and it allows you to basically create a rule-based system, whether it's for foliage, props, terrain, and it allows you to expose everything in the graph, which means we can swap assets on the fly. So for example, if I have a tree I don't like, I can just go into the PCG and swap everything in the graph. The learning curve, I'd say, isn't that hard. It does take some practice to kind of master PCG, but I'd say it's worth the time, because you eventually free up time you'd spend otherwise scattering things manually or painting it in Unreal, and focus more on the design and storytelling side of things. So I'll show a screenshot of one of my blueprints I'm developing for PCG, and this section is the scattering section, which is think maybe your trees, buildings, any other props. So if you're using a landscape, you're basically plugging in the landscape data into the surface sampler. Then you can use attribute filters to kind of layer growth based on the landscape layers. So for example, if you have a layer that's called soil, and you only need a certain asset to spawn on that layer, you can control it easily on the landscape layers. Then it's really powerful in the sense you can even add exclusion zones. So think of the exclusion zones as maybe roads, pathways, and other things. So if I don't want my asset spawning on those sections, I can plug that into the difference node, and it makes sure that it's all, it doesn't spawn in those sections. And this basically allows you to control the details. Then in Unreal, you can either draw roads using the spline system, sorry, the landscape spline system, or you can use a blueprint spline for things like spawning decals on roads, pathways, and other sections. So in my next slide, which is a breakdown, it just shows you how I usually set it up. So while Matt is playing the video, I'll just explain. I'll go over the basic setup. Yeah, so this is from a personal project where I set up this PCG system. It just allows me to throw this PCG volume in my scene and control each and every layer. So this, goes from high level tree setup to smaller things like moss scattered on top of boulders and rocks and other things. It allows you to also set up exclusion zones, like I mentioned in the previous slide. So sections you don't need growth, you can easily add these exclusion zones. Uh, the next one is also a breakdown video, so I think we can just play this, and I'll talk in detail. This is again another PCG system. Again, a quick example. These aren't final assets or anything, but here I'm using an example of a blueprint spline using decals to kind of scatter these decals based on the spline. And with the exclusion zones, this means I can draw a path anyway across the environment, and it ensures you don't get growth on those sections. We also have these exclusion zones I showed in the previous video, where I'll just pause on specific sections to kind of break it down further. So in this example, I have a blueprint spline, which is basically spawning decals on a pathway. Again, I know this is an automotive specific talk, but we can apply this to any environment. So picture this is your your main environment, and you have the car driving across a forest path or an arid desert. So if you feel like you'd need to change these assets, you can easily expose the meshes on the PCG graph and swap them out in real time. And with this rule-based system, I can draw the spline in any section in real time, and you see it adapts to the graph. So where we had growth before, we don't have it anymore, because Unreal knows that we've added this path to the exclusion zones, which basically means it won't be spawning anything on these sections. For this example, I only had one decal, but the sky is the limit. You can layer practically a number of decals or meshes on this path, and you can see it's changing on the fly. Exclusion zone actors are nice in the sense that, I mean, you can do this based on PCG volumes, but say you want to do a quick look dev on your scene for your shot, you can easily add a blueprint or an actor and assign a tag that basically says ignore any growth around this section. And once I scale it up, you can see we get this effect where nothing is being spawned on that section. It's better illustrated, I think, over here. Again, I have a similar PCG system, and I'm adding this exclusion zones in real time. Again, this is in editor. You're getting all these updates in real time. So now, if say this is an automotive based project, and you have the brief is we need a shot in this brutalist environment where we have these structures, and the car will be on a platform or a podium where it's a concrete brutalist setup, and we don't need to show any growth on those systems, on those sections, I mean. So again, every building in this environment has a PCG exclusion zone, which means nothing will grow on those sections. And yes, I mean, at the moment I'm working on a project, on a Lotus project where I can't say too much because it's still in progress, but we're creating an entire environment, and it's all using the new PCG systems. Hopefully I can, it's something I can share next time once it's complete, but it's an entire environment. It's all, based on actual DEM data, which means I took LiDAR scans of some environments and created that in Unreal and used this PCG system to set up the landscape. The beauty with the new versions is world partitioning, which means I can have a huge landscape and it doesn't really affect performance. So that covers not most, I think everything in terms of automotive projects and some other bonus tips for PCG. If you're interested in seeing more of our work, this is all the details, my website, LinkedIn, Instagram, Behance, and make sure you check out the Lotus design team as well on Behance and Instagram. Our latest film has been nominated for the Motor Film Awards, which is I think tomorrow. Hopefully wins a few awards. Yeah, so thank you for joining my presentation.